we'll do it with the voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning, our good pal from the Lightning Radio Network, the Lightning Audio Network, Dave Mishkin. Hey, Mish, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, Jay. Long time no see. I mean that very sarcastically. We've seen a lot of each other the last day and a half.
Pleasure's all mine, buddy. We were kind of joking around that you guys weren't at morning skate today, and I know you had Lightning Power Lunch today, but it was also an early wake-up call, that 8:45 bus from the beach to the arena. I was like, yeah, I don't know if the guys are going to come to that one. That's
I actually went for a walk on the beach.
Nice.
Not that you need to hear all of my dirty laundry, but I'm a runner. So on this short trip, I've had two, for me, longer, harder runs, including one yesterday. And I'm like, okay, I'm giving myself a pseudo, not a full day off, but just a more moderate day. So I was out for about an hour.
Nice.
Walked down and came back and got ready for power lunch, which we just finished, and now chatting with you.
There we go, man. And obviously the big news today over at Morning Skate today, Anthony Cirelli not in there, but John Cooper confirmed that he's going to be back in the lineup. But Mish, and I know that just because the lines are the way they are in Morning Skate doesn't mean they're going to be there for pregame warmups or for the game. But looking at the lines, I mean, we know that Point, Kucherov, and Guentzel are going to be there on line one, but Atkinson filling in for Cirelli there on a line with Cirelli, Hagel, and Connor Geekie. Talk to me about that middle six, on what you've seen so far and also what you think we could see for Game 4 tonight.
This is a complete guess, and I just went over this with Greg Linelli on Power Lunch. So I'm already kind of on the record saying that this is a guess, but this is how I kind of see how they ran the lines. So you're right, Guentzel with Point and Kucherov, and you mentioned Gonzalez with Paul and Gord. Mitchell Chaffee came in for Game 3 due to the Hagel suspension. I guess he was in also when they scratched Radish in Game 2, but they had to have a forward in there with Hagel out. So I thought Chaffee played very well in Game 3, and I felt that line gave the Lightning what they needed. So when the Lightning have gone 11-7 recently, often the line with two forwards has been Glendening and Girgensons, and there's been a rotation of a third guy. I think they like Chaffee with those two guys. I think they like what they got in Game 3. Again, I like what I saw, so I think they like it as well. So Cirelli is obviously going to play. So what do we make of this line with Hagel, Geekie, and Atkinson? I think Cirelli comes in. I think your scratches are Atkinson and Geekie. And I think this is more about what Mitchell Chaffee showed in Game 3. I may be wrong. They may scratch a defenseman. They may work the lines a little differently. Chaffee may be out, and they go back to Girgensons and Glendening as the line with two. But the fact that Geekie was not on the line with Paul and Gonzalez tells you something, and he was like a placeholder for Cirelli, and how they ran the lines. So that's how I interpreted it, but it's not like John Cooper went on the record and said anything. So we'll wait and see. I think this is more of a compliment to Chaffee, though. I thought he gave the Lightning really good minutes in Game 3.
You know what's funny?
And Geekie hit the post in Game 3. No, so I mean, it's not that his game has fallen off, the map. I think this is more about they really like what they got from Chaffee, and he fit in well with those other two guys on that line.
Dave, I'm going to add to that, and I did not know that we didn't put two and two together when we were standing there in the locker room before we left. Connor Geekie was one of the last players on the ice, and he usually is one of the last players on the ice.
Yeah.
But this was he was out there with Atkinson.
Yeah. So I wasn't there, so I didn't see that. Yeah. We reported that.
Yeah. You know what? Now that you say that, Dave, that you might be on to something right there. We may see Geekie scratch tonight.
Coop will probably get asked about that after the game, depending on what happens in the game. He may get asked about it tonight. He may get asked about it tomorrow.
Right.
And they have their reasons. But again, I think this is less of a condemnation of the player coming out and more of a compliment to the player who's staying in.
I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. What have you seen from I want to ask you about a guy like Gage Gonzalez. I know we talked about it during Lightning Power Lunch yesterday. We talked about the slipperiness, but for the different audience here, what have you seen as far as his growth from the first time you laid eyes on Gage Gonzalez to now? I mean, it's easy to just say like he's more confident, but what about his game has really translated to not just be successful in this postseason against the Florida Panthers, but also the back half of the regular season too?
Well, I mean, the first time I laid eyes on him, I think would have been one of the training camps when, his final junior year was the weird 2021 season. So I'm not sure. I don't really remember the first time I saw him, but I saw him in some camps when he didn't last very long, and he went straight to Syracuse, and he was basically an AHL player for the first 3 years of his professional career. He got the 2 games with the Lightning last year in his 3rd pro year. So this was the year, because after 3 years for a lot of players, you lose your waiver exempt status. You are waiver eligible. Usually that's the time when, if you've been in the minors, this is the time to take the next step. I think he would have made the team out of training camp. He had a good camp, but he got hurt. So he started the year in Syracuse, got called up, started well, kind of plateaued. They sent him back to Syracuse. He cleared waivers, sent him back to Syracuse. He really got his game in order. He came up, and he's been fantastic ever since. So as we discussed on Power Lunch yesterday, to me, it's less about, I think he needed to become a more well-rounded player, but a lot of that happened in the minors. He was an offensive guy as a junior player, and he kind of needed to learn how to play, a two-way game. Your role at the NHL, even for skilled players, unless you're really unique, you're going to be looking at a bottom 6. You're going to be asked to check. So I think he learned that. I think the big difference between, let's say, the first half of this year and the second half of this year is belief for him. The belief that it's no longer, can I make it here? Can I stay here? Or even I can stay here, but what's my role? What do I need to do to stay here? Now he has the belief, I'm an NHLer.
Right.
And once you make that kind of leap, and I haven't talked to him about this, I'm just basing on what I'm seeing from how he's playing. All the other things that made him a high draft pick, and all the other things that he's been working on and improving upon in the minors, we're starting to see put into practice. So when you are a confident player, you lose some hesitancy to your game, and your natural instincts take over. He is a strong guy for a guy who's not the biggest guy in the world. Right. He's pretty hard on the puck. He is slippery, as you said. He can stick handle in tight spaces. He's a facilitator. He led Syracuse in scoring last year, mostly with assists. And we've seen that in his time with the Lightning. He can make really nice passes, putting teammates in a position where they can get into a scoring area. And he can shoot. He can score from distance, top of the circle, high slot. He can rip it. So, look, what I'm describing is a pretty well-rounded player. And, he's learned the defensive side of the game. So he has been a great story this year. People are like, where are the Lightning going to find, younger players? I mean, he's not as young now because he's in his 4th year pro. Yeah. But the Lightning have traded away a lot of their draft picks. Gage Gonzalez was a guy, he was a draft pick the Lightning didn't trade away. They selected him and they have developed him. And now he's an NHLer and he is contributing in a big time way.
Jake Guentzel is a guy that we always knew how good he was, Dave, right? I mean, but it's never the same as when you see a guy day in, day out, night in, night out. And I think sometimes you play with a guy like Sidney Crosby, and some people will go, all right, well, what happens when you're not playing with an all-time great? And then he goes to Carolina at the deadline. You're like, wow, he's still contributing. He's still, stepping up. And then we see it here, 40 goals. He scores – has the goal the other night. For a while, he had 2 goals before they switched it over to Braden Point. But what is it about his game, Dave, other than just the ability to play with great players? But what is it about Jake Guentzel's game where it seems like at this time of year, he is one of those guys where the cream rises to the top?
Well, what is it about his game? John Cooper was asked about that at the start of the series, and he answered the way a lot of people have answered when talking about Jake Guentzel is hockey IQ. Because kind of like Gonzalez, he's not a big guy. He actually doesn't look small on the ice. But, I mean, his stats, he's not 6'3", 210, right?
Right.
So, he is what we would call, if not undersized, certainly not a big guy, but he is able to play in high traffic areas where usually smaller guys or undersized guys or guys who are not as big have trouble kind of camping out, right? So I think he's a very smart player. He can find open spaces on the ice. And the point about playing with Crosby, and he played with Sebastian Aho during his brief time in Carolina, and he's played primarily with Point and Kucherov. Coop said not everybody can play with Point and Kucherov. It's not just like you're going to go play with two of the best players in the world and you're going to excel because they're so good. You have to be able to think the game like they think the game, or else, it's like they're doing calculus and you're doing like second grade math, right? I mean, you kind of need to be able to keep up and anticipate what they are doing and kind of complement them in a productive way. And Guentzel has that in his DNA because that's what he's done throughout his career. Son of a coach, right? So, I mean, he knows the game really, really well. Why does he have this playoff success? I mean, we've only seen him in the playoffs for these 3 games because when he was in Pittsburgh, the Lightning never saw the Penguins in a playoff series. He did a lot of damage in his rookie year. The Penguins won the Stanley Cup that year. I think he had 13 goals of the 40 that he has scored. But the Penguins haven't done as well, since then. I think since winning the Cup in his rookie year, the Penguins won a first-round series the next year, and they haven't won a round since. And then last year in Carolina, he won a round because the Hurricanes won a round. So since winning the Stanley Cup as a rookie, he's only been involved in 2 winning playoff series. So he just hasn't had as many games played. But you look at his goals in the playoffs, 40 goals. Like I think he ranks 7th in NHL history when you factor in goals scored per playoff games. I mean, you're talking about some of the all-time greats, and his overall points per game is he's basically 1 for 1. So even when the Penguins, and I'm just using them as an example because that's where he spent most of his playoff time, even when they would go out in the first round, he was still being productive. Why is that? Well, I mean, he was asked after Game 3 just about being in the playoffs, and he's like, it's the best time of the year. This is when you want to be playing. So clearly a very, very good player, one of the top players in the NHL. His game doesn't drop off at all in the playoffs, and if anything, it elevates.
What do you think that the Florida Panthers are going to do? Is this one of those things, Dave, where they're just going to say, hey, no reason to overreact. We don't got to freak out. Let's just get back to playing our game. Is there any big – if you're Paul Maurice, I know that's a kind of a tough question to ask, but if you're the Panthers, do you try to do anything completely different? I know we did see Greer's coming in from Semskevich today or tonight. So that's the one adjustment there. But is there anything else from your eagle eye point of view up there where Florida's got to do this different if they're going to win this game tonight?
I think they played pretty well in the series, honestly, Jay. It was a weird Game 3 for them because their best defensive defenseman, one of the best defensemen in the NHL, Gustav Forsling, was -4. You were talking about Ekblad. His partner was -4. Of the two, Forsling had his fingerprints more on those minuses than Ekblad did. So if you're Paul Maurice, you're like, this was just a weird game. That is probably, we don't need to do that. Forsling will be fine. Whatever the percentage is, 95% of the time, Gustav Forsling makes the right play. Just so happened he made a couple of plays that turned into Lightning goals in Game 3.
Right.
What I would expect, and this isn't exclusive to the Florida Panthers, I think it's true in many playoff years. I think we've seen it in this playoff year in all the series. The team that loses the previous game usually has some kind of a response in the next game. And sometimes it's right at the beginning of the game. We saw that from the Lightning in Game 2, right? They came out like gangbusters. I mean, the Lightning didn't really have a response at the beginning of Game 3, and they lost the previous game. But, for the Panthers, they'd won 2, now they lost. So what's going to happen in the next game? You might say, well, the Lightning have gained some confidence. They finally generated some looks against the stingy Florida defense. I think score effects had something to do with that. The Lightning weren't chasing. They were either tied or up after the goal late in the first tied the game at 1. But for the Panthers, I would expect they're going to have some pushback tonight. And it's not really XO pushback. It's more just surging, right? They're going to dig in because they put themselves in a great spot winning the first 2 on the road. The last thing they want is to be 2-2 going back to Tampa. Not that they are intimidated by going to win a road game.
Right.
But they had control of the series. I think they still have control of the series. But if they lose tonight, Now it becomes a best of 3, obviously. I mean, I'm stating the obvious here. So I think they are going to be extremely motivated to kind of push back after taking a gut punch in game 3. That's what I would expect tonight. Less about the X's and O's. Right. And I think the players that kind of struggled for them in game 3, I would look for them to bounce back tonight.
One guy that hasn't struggled for the Tampa Bay Lightning over these last, 4 or 5 periods is a guy like Andrei Vasilevsky. And Mish, we find out today that he is a finalist for the Vezina Trophy for the 5th time in his career. Already won it once. I'm so happy that he was able to be healthy after missing the first 20 games last year. But when you look at him and you see what makes him so great, he's so detailed. The way that he tracks the puck. I don't know if I don't want to say we take it for granted, but it's going to be a sad day when the Tampa Bay Lightning don't have number 88 between the pipes, because my goodness, to just be able to fill his name out on the sheet every night, it gives you a chance to win. And I wonder if Florida looks at this. Are they concerned with Vazzy at all? Do they know who they're going up against? You're right. So I don't know if necessarily they're like trembling in fear, but they have to know as well. Like, we got to throw a bunch of pucks on net. We got to do whatever we can, because the big cat seems to really be rounding into gear right now.
Well, he had an outsized role in the Lightning's game 3 win, because that was as busy as he has been in the series. I mean, I said on our show yesterday, you and I were talking about this, and I said, I think the Panthers had more scoring chances in game 3 than they had in the first 2 games combined. They had scoring chances in game 1, and they were great scoring chances. They just didn't have a lot of them. They only had 16 shots. They built a big lead, and they were kind of like, all right, we don't need any more goals. Game 2 was a quiet game for really both goalies. Right. Once it became 1-0, both teams D'd up. So Vazzy hadn't really been dealing with consistent pressure until game 3, but in game 3 he saw it, particularly when it was 1-0 Florida in the first period. And the Panthers generated a bunch of dangerous chances, and Vazzy turned them all aside. Huge key to their win, because they kept the game, thanks to Vazzy, 1-0, right? It wasn't 2-0, it wasn't 3-0. They didn't fall into a deep hole, and then they got the game tied. So, I mean, look, he had a great year. Statistically, he had a great year. Visually, he had a great year. I don't think he's going to win the award. I think Hellebuck is going to win it based on Hellebuck's season. I will point out that these votes are cast before the first playoff game is played. So this is, like a lot of the awards, a regular season award. I mean, it's not, because the player says, I won this trophy, but it's basically, it's voted on based on what you did during the regular season. The Vezina is also voted on by the general managers. I think Hellebuck wins it, but I'm glad for Vazzy. He deserved to be a finalist. And now is when, the games are more important now than they were during the regular season. Hopefully Vasilevsky can keep it going. But he played very, very well in game 3.
No doubt. Dave, before I let you go, is there one player or one storyline that you're keeping a close eye on tonight, maybe more than the rest?
I am curious to see if either one of these teams can kind of get their power play going. I know the Panthers had the 3 for 3 in game 1. The Lightning were really out of sorts, and they also didn't have Cirelli on any of those kills. It was just game 1 was like thrown in the garbage if you're the Lightning. Since then, though, neither team has scored in the power play, despite having lots of chances. Both teams have had a major as well where they didn't score. And we've seen the power play really flip the balance in other series. I mean, notably that LA Edmonton series, like both teams have done very, very well in the power play. And, you want to have a good penalty kill. I mean, I think having a good penalty kill is actually more important than having a good power play in a playoff series, because you can find other ways to score. If you have a leaky penalty kill, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself to make up what the penalty kill is allowing. Having said that, both these teams have good power plays. So will one of these teams win the special teams battle tonight? And it could mean the difference in the outcome. Or it'll just be a push again, right? Which we've kind of seen the last 2 games.
No doubt about it. He is the voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning, our good pal Dave Mishkin from the Lightning Audio Network. Make sure you go get the book too. Blind Squirrel, man. People were talking about it the other night at the game. I was like, Mish, man, it's getting out there, buddy. So how's everything gone with the book, man? Everything you expected?
Yeah, it's been such a rewarding experience, Jay. The writing it was one part of the experience, and then getting it published was another part. But it came out about a year ago, and I've really spent. So I had some help in the Tampa Bay market getting the word out, and the response was great. I've kind of spent this year though, like learning about what works and what might be a smart marketing move and what is just kind of spinning your wheels, and you kind of have to go through it to figure it out. This is not my wheelhouse, so I've thrown a lot of spaghetti at the wall, and some of it is stuck, some of it hasn't, but you have to go through that learning experience. At the end of the day though, I wrote the book because I wanted it to be read, and I'd like it to be read by as many people as possible. And so really kind of my next step is to try and spread the word outside the Tampa Bay market, because most people in our market have heard of it. If they're interested in it, they've gotten it. Maybe they haven't read it yet. I mean, for me personally, sometimes I get a book and I'm going to read it. I just haven't read it yet. But I think there's an audience out there, sports related audience, mental health related audience, love story related audience, character kind of driven story related audience. I think there is an audience out there that just doesn't know it exists. And so the challenge is like, how do you tap these people on the shoulder and let them know it's there? And if they get it, they'll enjoy it.
I know
that's my hope anyway.
I know they can get it on Amazon. Where else can they get it, Dave?
Well, yes, Amazon is one place to get it. You can find it on actually just a lot of these websites. Barnes and Noble has a website as well. It's on there. In Canada, actually, it's on indigo.ca.
Nice.
So it's been on these platforms. Retail wise, though, the team store still has it at Amalie Arena, and it's at a bunch of local bookstores in the Tampa Bay market. Barnes and Noble Brandon has it. Tombolo Books in St. Pete has it. But I think if you Google it, you can pretty much find a place that works for you. Some people like ordering books on Amazon. Some people don't, but you don't have to. It's available in other places too.
It's a beautiful thing. Again, the voice of the Tampa Bay Lightning and our good friend Dave Mishkin. Mish, appreciate you, buddy. I've seen a lot of you, and I'm going to see some more of you. I'll see you later on tonight.
Yeah, see you in a few hours, Jay. Thanks.
All right, buddy. The one.